Welcome to Brightly You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we share soul-driven advice and topics to help you live more brightly in mind, body, and spirit. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and passions, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Amy, it's my favorite time of year.
what the most wonderful time of the year? I don't know. What is it?
Spotify Wrapped just dropped.
Oh, yeah.
It is December's the month that does not count in your analytics for the year. It is
It's
a time
so funny,
right? Like it is a time, it's my favorite time of year. It's a time of reflecting on the year, planning the next one. All the things I forgot I said I do don't matter because I can say I'm going to do them again in 3 weeks. Like,
okay, I love that best of all. It doesn't matter. It's the slate is being wiped clean before our very eyes.
December's a nice wintry pause to reflect, improve, or alternately, like I feel like, if you're in social media or like TV, even like Good Morning America, like there's two types of people right now. It's the slow down, it's the holidays, let's have a little fun, let's reconnect and make memories group. And then there's me, and like there's 30 days left to the year, and I'm gonna run to them and see like all that stuff I didn't do for 11 months. Let's do it all.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Which one are you?
I think I am a combination of both. And it might be a combo platter of both in the exact same day, or maybe one day I'm this way and the next day I'm the other way. But for me right now, I'm very much in a reflective mood. And I was actually I think I can't remember which episode it was, but we were talking about the yearly compass and how it's a
Yes.
wonderful tool for reflection. Now, I'm still on the very first piece of it, but I think that I was going to just wait until the end of December. But then I started doing something else. And I needed that as sort of a break from something else, which
So the yearly compass it's a free tool. If
yeah.
you aren't familiar, if you don't remember us talking about it, we didn't come up with it. These other group of international designers and forward thinkers, thought partners kind of did, but it's this booklet, and the first half of the booklet is reflecting on the past year or the past. And then once you've done that and figured out where you are and what you did, like they even have you draw pictures. Like this is not like a time to like judge yourself and be mean about what you did or didn't do.
Listen to like, episode 97.
But then once you've done the reflection, then you plan your next year, right? Like and hopefully you can do it a little bit more informed and enthusiastically.
I love that because we talk so much about moving forward and taking the steps forward, whether they be inch by inch or 40-day sprint or however or the combination of both. But this episode really is about looking backward first. It was, and I didn't know, I had to look up who said it. Gerge Santayana. Is credited with those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it.
I didn't know that had an owner. I thought it was just like a thing we all knew. I didn't realize one guy got credit for it.
He did. And I wanted to make sure that I was giving credit where credit was due. I
appreciate that. Yeah.
Supposedly due. Anyways, and I know that sounds dramatic, that you're doomed to repeat it, but I actually think that there are things in our lives that we keep doing over and over and over again.
Amy, did I share with you what I'm considering making my new alarm? As part of the 30-day sprint, or now I'm closer to 30, and by the time this airs, closer to like 14 days. And now I've lost it. If you do not break the pattern, you are doomed to repeat it tomorrow or something. Like you say, like I saw it on a TikTok and it
Yeah.
was just like the most ominous, like robotic computer sound. And it hit so hard and so close to home. Cycle. Uh we'll post it online. I
All
mean, I know
right.
we say that a lot, but we'll post it. But yeah. Um,
Or you'll
but it
send it
was
to me
just
to post.
there we go. But like it's just it's like this reminder that like if I don't break the pattern, like if I keep sleeping in or lounging or not doing the stuff, the daily things that are going to lead to the big things I want to do or prepare me to be ready for the big things, right? I'm just going to repeat the same cycle, these same thoughts, the same everything over and over and over again,
Yes.
right? Like you could say it's history,
Yes.
but like it doesn't have to be as grand as like looking 50 years in the past. Your history's yesterday. It's 20
It
minutes ago.
is. It is. Now, I started big because a friend of mine, we both know her, told me that she had done a personal timeline for her life.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by that. Like, why would you do that?
Did she have an answer? Did you ask?
She really, and this honestly, when we talked about this was almost a year ago that we were talking about this. And for her, it was just a way to really actually see her life, kind of just see it for her. I think it was more seeing it than learning lessons. For me, I feel like it was a it also was a good way to see my life. It's sort of like this tangible, almost a tangible representation instead of just swirling about that one time that goes over and over again. But there, I also just like think you can literally see patterns when you start doing it. You can see patterns. You can see the major things or what you chose to put as major things and how they perhaps have influenced you now. And like you see those, like I said, the patterns, the connections. It's kind of amazing, but also really, really hard. Just so you know, you have to
I
start with like a 10,000 view, like born me now, and then
well,
figure out. And
you
because I have more decades than you, I finally just did it in decades. I was like
smart. Groupings,
zero,
yeah.
10, 20, and then from there I did, like I said, the big things, and then I got a little more granular, and then I had to walk away, and that's when I did the yearly reflection.
So I have done a timeline before,
Yeah.
about 15 years ago, maybe a little less, for grad school, in a career counseling class. He had us, one of our
Oh,
assignments was to get out poster board and make a timeline. And it was both career, but then also life milestones. And it was like, every year from like the first major milestone you remember to your current year. And when I did that exercise, what surprised me was I had years that were blank. And I felt a
oh
lot of
yeah.
shame and really embarrassed about it. And he's like, one, poor memory, or two, not every year is going to be memorable, right? Like it's building up to other things.
Mhm.
And I was still, just in my 20s, so, and I hadn't been married or anything like that too. So I was, kind of judging and comparing to the people around me and what they're doing. But I didn't really have like a major reflective period on it other than, oh, this is a tool to use people later in life who are considering changing careers to represent like all the
Or
experience
writing a memoir.
or writing a memoir. There we go. Like there's so many
Yeah.
ways to use it. But for me, when you were just talking about how it might be hard, I had a moment last night. I wasn't doing a timeline, but it was pretty close to it. In preparing for my favorite time of the year, I wanted to make new templates for 2023 so that I'm all bright and shiny and ready for our special super secret planner day we're going to have. And I wanted to design all this stuff so I wouldn't get distracted from goal setting and planning by like the functionality of it and what I wanted to do, right?
Sure.
And
Yes.
so I was like, okay, there's some stuff I did last year that I liked, and there's a couple things I did in prior years, and like I want to go back at two and steal, and I want to like merge and make all this stuff. And so I was digging through all the files on my computer, which is kind of a digital timeline without even trying it.
Oh.
And in looking up and looking for all these templates and looking through my old bullet journals and all this stuff, I was reminded of all the stuff I haven't completed, all the stuff that is still that I
Oh.
was thinking of putting for 2023, and all
Okay,
good reason,
Tracy,
all root causes, but
just so
it
you
was hard to
know,
see that in front of me.
on my timeline, there's nothing that I didn't complete. I didn't put down, did not complete this
Yeah.
at that point, did not complete this at that point. I had enough things that I felt shame around. I didn't need
Right.
to add those things as
But
well.
that's where there's like this
But
accountability
yeah,
pieces of stuff I did I'm not proud of, or stuff I didn't do that I feel like
yes.
I should have by now, right? Like,
But here's the other thing with that. And I'm just going to say, if you were to write those things down, another thing to do with that is to say, okay, I didn't do that. What stopped me? What was it?
right?
And
Do that
were
root
you
cause analysis.
exactly?
Yeah.
Now, for me, I am not feeling shame or guilt. When I said it got really hard, I had to walk away. I did. I had to walk away just because it was like, I just had a birthday. I'm 64. I've had a lot of shit happen, right? I've been through a lot of shit. People in my family have gone through a lot of stuff. Like, so after a
Oh,
while,
you
you're
lived
just
a
like,
life.
okay, yes, I have lived a life. So then I did the yearly compass.
Mm.
And that was also sort of the same process. It's the things that just off the top of my head, I remembered. I did a list of that. Then I went through my planner.
That was my favorite part of it.
Yes. And then I added to it. And then I was like, oh, you put this down here. That actually belongs up here. Because I wanted it to be somewhat chronological. So once again, what are the patterns that I'm seeing?
Mm.
And so once I did some of that, not all of it, I could go back to, and I'm actually pointing behind me. It's hard to see, but I've got it up on a whiteboard. It's on a piece of paper on a whiteboard. And then so I used a few different inks, and then I finally went to pencil, and I penciled in more. And then I did the yearly compass again. And then I went back to that and penciled in more. And it felt, like I said, it was hard, but it also felt cathartic. And I feel as if I could keep adding onto it, but I don't need to. I don't.
So, what types of patterns could people see through a timeline exercise?
Well, I mean, personally, what I saw as I looked at it, I was like, huh, was I going through my Saturn return then?
Oh,
And I looked it up, and yes, indeed, I
yeah.
was. For two, I could tell when two Saturn returns happened. And when they were happening, I had never heard of Saturn return.
Well, learning about Saturn returns made me feel a whole lot better about what happened to me in 2012. Oh,
Yes,
that
a
was when I was
whole
like,
lot better.
oh, the universe was like, oh, you're not paying attention to subtle signs. You're not meant to do this. We're going to implode your entire life.
Thwack.
And you're going to
Right.
take 4 years to figure out
Yes.
what you should have been doing anyways.
So when I realized that, because I looked up the dates, you can look up the dates of where was Saturn when, right? And I just was like, so I'm sorry, I keep looking behind myself. But once I realized that, there was sort of a weight that went off of my shoulders. It's not that it's not that I'm being irresponsible. I know what I'm responsible for, but I also realized that yes, there were some outside forces as well. The other pattern that I saw is that apparently at my decades, big things happen really close to the decade mark.
And it
So
wasn't intentional on your part that like, oh, I'm about
no,
to turn 40, XYZ should be happening.
no
Okay.
deaths, changes, births, big
Major
things,
milestones.
major milestones. And they weren't the same as the Saturn return. They weren't quite as balled up as the Saturn returns were, but it was interesting. And so what I got from that is
70's gonna be a big deal.
yeah.
Sorry.
Exactly
You got 6
what
years to prepare.
I thought, okay, this is good for preparation. Like, hey, something big could happen. Let's work towards something big, good happening. Let's actually be intentional. That's the other thing that this timeline did is it was like, oh, I could decide to be way more intentional in my life. Now, the yearly compass, I could see like anytime I was like, oh, that's when I got the idea for this thing. Oh, that's when I got the idea for this other thing. It was like, after I had done something really cool, whether it was like go to the cabin with Tracy and have a deep dive on something, or do this expedition to Seoul that I did with the Sisters Enchanted.
So
What
that's what I liked about the yearly campus or yearly compasses suggestion about like go through your planner and write down like
Yes.
the things that mattered, the things that were important, the big things, because if someone were to just be like, hey, what were the big things that happened in your year? I would feel really lame and be like, I didn't have any milestones, right? Like I didn't have anything big happen. I didn't, I'm still in school. I haven't graduated yet. I'm not seeing
or I
anyone,
had
don't
these
have any
crappy things
kids,
that happened,
right? But
like
like
surgery and,
when I haven't done it yet for this year, but like my very first year doing the yearly compass, I had this planner and I had all these auntie adventure moments with my niece and nephews and
oh,
like all these little moments throughout the year. And I was like, well, this is the stuff that matters. They're probably not going to remember in 15 years that we went and did this Dinosaur Valley Fair thing, but like it was such a big deal for us both that day, or like just to take like the whole day with them, or like going to a concert with a friend and seeing, or even like getting to see Britney Spears in concert. Like, when someone's like, make a timeline of your life, I don't think I would put down seeing my teenage self's favorite musical artist as like a major accomplishment for my year.
right,
But in just
right.
like reflecting on the year and what made you feel good, it was huge. It was a huge part of it. I flew out of state to do it. Like, so it
See,
gets
and
you to
that's
appreciate the little things.
yes, I love that about the yearly compass. And it really made me appreciate when I did fill out my planner, and my planner actually has a spot every week for what's the best thing that happened this week. And more times than not, I would fill it out. So then I was like, oh, yeah, that thing
Well,
happened.
so earlier this fall, I was doing I was trying to go to a set number of local county parks.
Yes.
Some I'd been to, some never been to, but do as many as I could before like daylight savings and the weather and all that. And I remembered I had this old dollar spot travel log that I had never used before, this little paper notebook.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so instead of like writing about miscellaneous things, I did half a page per park. And like now like the nice thing about it is now when I go for a hike, I look for stuff to write about. Like, and
Oh,
instead of just being like, oh, this is just a little 2 mile trail and I'm by myself and it's just a quick thing before the sun goes down. Now I'm like talking about what the tree looked like or what this river made me feel, or, like what I was thinking, like I look for things. I look for the memories, even when I'm alone, just on a trail now in a park, because it's like, oh, I'm going to journal about this later. And when I reread it, I'm like instantly there. And so I also started taking at least one picture per park. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to try and print like little Polaroid pictures or whatever of it. Because like they're moments now. They're little pieces of moments instead of
I
just like
love
being
that.
like, oh, I went to 32 parks in November. Now I have actual memories per tiny little park. I don't know.
That's so important. It really did. This exercise made me double down on my commitment to using a planner much more robustly, because this is the first time I've actually that is a true word. I've ever actually written down it. I've thought about it. And
Yeah.
how sometimes you're like, oh, I'm going to read this question, write down the highlights of last year. And then you're just like, yeah, this happened and this happened, but you don't actually write it down or look in your planner or do anything. When I looked in my planner, that was the other thing, and saw all these Some of them, not everything was fun. There were some things in my planner that weren't fun. But for the most part, these fun things or interesting things or great people that I spent time with and did, or spending time with my granddaughter or my children, or it, like you said, you're in that moment again. And I wish I would have written a little bit more
Mm.
about it in my
Mhm.
planner. But for the most part, I do take pictures, but I love your idea of maybe printing some of those photos and actually
And putting it
putting
in.
them with the things that you're
Yeah,
remembering.
because I used to use Instagram as like a visual diary, a visual timeline.
I love it. I loved it when you do that, like
Yeah.
your diary for the week or
Yes.
whatever.
And sometimes it'd
Yes.
be like a month or a 2 week period if I didn't feel
Yeah.
like I did a lot. Cause I'm not just going to take a picture of, my breakfast sandwich that day unless it was absolutely noteworthy, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't need to have a
I
picture a
take
day.
I take far
Um,
too many pictures of food, or I used
but
to.
like I I sometimes I'm like, oh, I have a terrible memory because I can't recall things on the spot. Even if I sit and I think like I'm very introverted and so I need time to prepare and like think about it or like something will come to me later. But when I look at my Instagram, it plays like a video in my head just from seeing that one photo. I can tell you every part of my 33rd birthday at the North Shore by myself, like
Mhm.
down to like the park and the people I met and what I did and where I ate and when I woke up, all of it, but without that like trigger moment, right? Like a journal wouldn't quite be the same because I'm only kind of remembering what I wrote about, but I don't know what it is about like that visual timeline of my year.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, a
whatever.
picture is worth 1,000
There we
words.
go. So for me, so I when I went through my Saturn return, it shut me down. I didn't know what it was at the time, and I just thought I was failing at life. And it took me going through that to realize what it really was. But so around, well, 2016, I got into bullet journaling, and to help me stop being upset about the past and being ashamed of my timeline and trying to avoid it and avoid the patterns and just like move forward, I was like, okay, let's focus on the future and like let's visualize that. And I think I've shown this on the podcast before. But I wrote
Yeah.
out every year of my life that year. So my age. So I wrote out every age and then I added what year it was because for some reason in my head, I was separating the two. Like to me,
Oh,
growing
that's
up,
brilliant.
yeah, to me, growing up, the year 2020 sounded fake. I know John
Okay.
Mulaney has a joke, right? But it didn't sound like the year 2034, 2084. I could be alive in 2084. It doesn't sound like a real year, right? And part of
I
that's
was
because
so mad when I found out I was going to be 40 in 2020. Like, are you kidding? Like,
whereas
I'd be 41. How old is that? I was
or like
12 at the
I'm like, oh
time.
my God, I'm gonna be 40 in a couple of years. And then at the same time, I'll look at something and be like, oh my God, I'm gonna be 40 in 2024. Like, I don't know why my brain disconnects my age from the
Okay.
year.
I,
And so
I
that's
do
why I
love
did
that,
that.
though. Yeah. Yeah.
But so it's just kind of nice for me because then I can look at it and it helps me refocus, or it did at the time, but now I can also look back and be like, 2018, you bought a house. You were 34. You were such a baby when you bought a house, right?
Oh
Like
my
I'm able to
gosh.
look at it backwards that way.
Yeah, I forgot to put some things on my timeline, but I think I need to do that because I feel like I do need to connect my years
To the ages.
to the ages.
Or even,
Yes.
I mean, I've noticed for my friends with kids, so many of their years and milestones and moments are tied up to their kids' like I would imagine
Yes.
my mom, like, or my aunt or whatever. I feel like all of us graduated in 2012. Like there was even my cousin and I had my master's degree walk and she had her undergrad, and my family had to debate about which one. They were at the same time. I don't know why two local schools would do that, but like some people were trying to convince me, oh, you've already graduated before, like this shouldn't matter. And I was like, this was 3 of the hardest years of my life. This absolutely matters
It's
more.
a
Like,
master's.
right? Well, exactly. And so it's like trying to balance. And then we were best friends who were roommates and we couldn't attend each other's graduations, right? But so I know
Oh.
my mom right now is thinking, because I had at least one sister graduating from high school that same month. Like I have a feeling that if I were to say a certain year to my relatives, that they would be like, oh my God, and like would be able to name 10 of my accomplishments because that year was the year of me, right? Or the year of all of us accomplishing things.
Yeah.
Um, because I do that with my nieces and nephews now and stuff like that too, with what they do and what they're into. Like, I don't know, it's easier to ground memories in the youth.
It is. No, it is. And there are many things that on my timeline, I had to think to myself, not how old was I? How old were the
How old were the
kids?
kids?
And then I could figure it out. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
but
some things like I full on have forgotten vehicles I've driven, like when,
oh yeah.
and things like that. And like, that was such a huge part of my life. Like, I've only ever driven beaters that I've had to scrape together pennies for. And like, God knew if they'd run or not. And like, now here I am in like the comfortableness of my old age and being like, just completely
My old
forgetting 3
age.
years of my life and the
Whatever,
hell that car
Tracy.
brought to me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I should have written that down too. What I love about this process is that you can go as broad or as granular as you want to. I think it's a I think it's an interesting process to try and do your life, just even to try to do it, because then you're like, holy crap. Like, yes, a lot of things have happened. And then just you and me talking right now, I'm like, oh, I forgot to write
This
that down.
happened.
Oh,
This
I forgot
happened.
that to write that down.
Well, and like,
So
I
then,
love,
well, just a second. So then the yearly, like, then you're like, look at all this great stuff that happened. Then you could do monthly. And then what if at the end of every day you were like, this is a great thing that happened, or this is how I felt. And it was a wonderful feeling.
Amy, on my whiteboard on my fridge, the only thing I have on there right now is a life is made up of days.
Oh,
Right. And like, that's
I
both,
love that.
right? That's like really grounding. And then at times just completely overwhelming and not what you need at 4 a.m. when you're just making breakfast, just feeding your cat. But like, uh, oh, what's the other quote I really love lately? Like, the days are long but the years are short, and I feel like
Yes.
doing a timeline exercise really represents that. But I love your idea of doing it in decades, because I feel like when you look at it granularly as a year, you see patterns, but when you have decades you see themes, and it's kind of like the themes of your
I
life.
didn't even think of that, Tracy. And I think I could go back there and absolutely spot on have themes. Like in my head, I'm already like, oh, this was, absolute mother theme. This year was, moving on theme. I mean, that is amazing
Well, and I
to
wonder how many of us from the pandemic like have similar themes or patterns, or like how varied our timelines are from just like that blip and interruption. Kind of like the Avengers, just like it was a snap and everything changed.
right. I think that would be interesting to even just do a timeline of that
Of
portion.
themes.
Or of just themes. Yeah.
And
See,
I
I think that there's no rules here. That's the great thing. Like, really, make up your own rules about how you want to do this. I mean, if you commit to doing it, though, you should finish it. And I'm not saying finish it in a day. It's taken me a long time. And obviously, it's an ongoing project. And
I was
yeah.
I was surprised the first time I did the yearly compass how long it took. Like, I think I blocked off like 2 hours, and like they tell you how long to take, but I think I was like, I could do this whole thing in 2 hours. And then like 3 weeks later, just rambles of pages and planner notes and sticky notes, and just like the whole
Yeah.
world just imploded. And it's like, oh, this is a whole new way to reflect on
My
your life.
brain on my wall.
I haven't even looked at the next year yet, and I'm 3 weeks into it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm still
Yeah. Well, honestly, that's how I'm feeling with this yearly reflection, is that even today I added more things. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So I don't know.
so So it sounds like it's inspired you moving forward to just maybe name and categorize and collect these individual moments and kind of treat everything like a milestone as much as you can. But when you started it, what was kind of your parameters, your outcomes, or what was kind of your framework for like wanting to do a timeline?
So my parameters for wanting to do a timeline is that I just wanted to see if I could do it, what it would take for me to actually try and concentrate and figure out. So it was literally just, could you do this? Could you take the time to do this? Could you like really concentrate on it and not just go mark 5 things down and say, this is too hard, tralala, and walk off. So that literally was it. But then once I started to see things, and as I kept adding things and they were all like clustered together, I was like, let me and then I literally stepped back. And that's when I went, oh, you have a pattern in your life. Let's keep
Mm,
going with this. Let's just keep going with this and dig into this a little bit more. So now it is, I am absolutely going to do the themes because I think that will just create another layer. And then it's not like I need to constantly go back to that one decade where, I feel shame or guilt or anything around. It's not that. It's looking at it as a whole and realizing how all of those things shape me today. And maybe this is why I do this thing, or maybe
mm,
that's why I do this other thing. But not just to observe it, but to learn from it and to take things out of it. But I want to go back to one thing you said when you said, so it sounds like you're committed to documenting things and maybe creating milestones out of the little things. And that I think deserved repeating, creating milestones out of the little things.
yeah, you don't have to wait until the end of a year or a decade to make a timeline.
No,
Like
you don't.
I mean, it is a fun, great reflection exercise, but maybe as part of your weekly, biweekly, monthly planning, like start collecting that stuff now in the moment when it matters the most instead of trying to find or recollect those moments
Yeah.
at the end of the year. Um, I mean, a lot of people, that's what gratitude journals do, and some
Hmm.
spaces have it. I just, parts of this reminds me of that chokehold that scrapbooking had on society in the mid
Oh
2000s
my
and
gosh.
archivers and all that. And so, like I said, like I use Instagram that way, especially now that you can do like 10 pictures per post or whatever. I think that's what kind of started it for me. But you could even start doing it that way as just like a memory project too, but then also like incorporate the reflection and the journaling and the what I
Mhm.
was going through. But I want to go back to what you said about like, some of these eras of your life, you might feel guilt or shame.
Mhm.
And as uncomfortable as it can be, I think why it took me so long the first time I did it was because I wanted to feel that, because I didn't want to look back on my life in 20 years and still feel guilt and shame about something that was already done. And that hopefully in planning in the future, like you said, like my life is made up of all these, collections of events, and it's how I make decisions now, right? Like
Mhm.
past you got you to where you are now.
Mhm.
Appreciate what they went through. They didn't know what you know now, right? And like it also seems like this timeline exercise, and it's why I think we did it in counseling psychology too, was like a release, right? That you
Yeah.
could remark it
Yeah.
and release it
Mm.
if it
It
did still feel bad.
it is a release. And I want to clarify. I actually don't feel it. I think I was saying areas that I could feel
Yes, yeah,
that or maybe did feel that in the past. Doing it now, I didn't. It still was, I'm not saying it wasn't, it still was heavy. I still had to like
yeah.
walk away from it.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think part of walking away from it was opening my brain up to just be like, all right, let's walk away and see what could happen. But that is why it was a good exercise, because it did feel like a release.
Well,
Absolutely.
yeah, because for me, especially because I'm a bit more granular, not at a point yet for decades, or I don't feel like I've had enough milestones. I'm still kind of cherry picking moments for that kind of themes. But 2021 was really rough for me. But when I sat down and did a reflection exercise and went through my planner, like I just put it in like a notes document, the amount of doctor's appointments I had alone,
Mhm.
not even just the number of surgeries, because the number of surgeries seems small to me, but that's kind of a lot in a short period of time, right? For three different
Yes.
things. And so I was
Yes.
like, this was a year of health for you, right? Like it was a year of rest and recovery and health. And that's okay. And instead of like feeling bad for everything I didn't do or that it was yet another goal pushed forward or, stuff not achieved or new memories made, was able to sit and reflect in the gratitude I had. I mean, you donated PTO to me. My employer was incredibly flexible and got me a new debt. Like everybody was so supportive in me that the timeline exercise for me last year was an exercise in gratitude. And
Mhm.
instead of like wallowing and all, because I didn't want to do it because I was like, you
Wow.
didn't finish anything from when you finished your office on like March 12th or whatever, on like what did you have? And it was like, you had a lot of support and a lot of friends and a lot of love and care.
What a wonderful way to view that, though, because you could have been like, this was a year for, misery and discomfort and hospital and doctors, but instead you chose health. It was a year of
It
health
was a year
and
of health.
recovery and rest. I love that wording.
Yeah, because in the moment it would have been a year of pain. There's sometimes when I
Right.
remind myself like you were in a tremendous amount of pain.
Yes.
But
And you don't have to forget that.
yeah,
Yeah, but you don't need to wallow there.
exactly.
Yes.
Thank you. Wow, this is so what a good exercise. Yet another analysis for us to do with some reflection. I love it. Another tool for your toolkit, everybody. You don't have to do them all, but if you want to do this one, the time seems right for it. All right. Well, if this episode spoke to your soul, please share it with a friend. And if you have time, give us some love on your preferred platform with a rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful and reflective day. Bye.